And I think that was the first time in my life where things didn't happen my way, that everything I thought was just obvious would work didn't work.
Mm.
And I think at that moment was the first time where I started therapy for the first time. I'm Daniela. I am a 36-year-old woman. I am originally Colombian, and I moved to the US when I was, I want to say, 6 years old. And so I left my home country due to safety reasons, which was a really difficult time for my parents to detach themselves from a country that had given them everything. And all of a sudden, we had to pack our bags and leave and go to the US as immigrants. So I went to school and I did all my primary and secondary in the US. And then I felt really passionate about people's stories.
Mhm.
And I always felt that I was almost a magnet to kids, but also to adults just sitting next to me and telling me their life stories. And I always wondered, what is that about? What is it? Why me? What is there about me? And I started recognizing in high school, and especially the later years of high school, how I would hear this phrase come up often: you're such a good listener. You're such a good listener.
Mhm.
And I didn't understand what that meant. But I realized that there was a profession
Mhm.
that I could study where I would be not only a good listener, but I would understand why we think a certain way and why we behave a certain way and what are the influences of our environment and our behavior. Bear in mind, when I was very little, I always wanted to be a doctor,
Uh-huh.
a pediatrician, and I love kids and I have this special connection with kids, really. Then I was like, maybe there's something else that is a calling for me. And maybe this rigid idea of becoming a doctor isn't necessarily what I will be thriving in. So I discovered psychology through an AP course in
Mhm.
high school, and I loved everything about it. I loved that there was science, that there was math, that there was a human component, that there were kids potentially, that there was this care
Mhm.
for others and this act of service to others. I think maybe that was another reason why I wanted to be a doctor, which was I've always had this calling to serve,
Mhm.
um, and be of help to the community in some way. And so I then chose psychology, and I decided that I wanted to give it a try. So at that point, my parents were able to go back to Colombia, where I'm from
Mhm.
originally, because violence and safety was back with a president that we had. And they gave me the news that, we're going to move back, which means that you can stay and study in the US under your own independence, and you have to pay for your studies and do all of that, or you can come and we can give you an education in
In Colombia.
Colombia.
Mhm.
And at that time, all my friends were moving away. I had no idea what I wanted to do. All my friends were going to different states, even. So my life as I knew it in school was going to change.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? Why not? I'm going to try something new. I've always been quite adventurous and curious and a big traveler.
Mhm.
So I said, okay, I'm going to go to Colombia. I didn't know how to write in Spanish. I've never taken any academic courses in Spanish. I had no friends in Colombia, really. And I said, okay, I'm going to take that, bite the bullet, just go. And when I went, I realized that there was a bit of a culture shock because I was raised in America with very different environment,
Yeah.
friends, exposure. And when I went to Colombia, which was where I was from, I had a little bit of an identity crisis. I'm meant to be Colombian, but I do not resonate with what's going on, the food, I didn't. And so I struggled a little bit. My first semester of University of
Mhm.
Psychology, I felt that I wasn't thriving academically as much as I wanted to. I was
Mhm.
always a very good student. I was always recognized for my grades, for my performance in school. And here I was not being able to, one, click with the people around me, but secondly, achieve academic results as I was used to. So that was a huge sort of reality check
Mhm.
of, whew, context matters, right? It's
Yeah.
not just your skill set, but context matters. And so I started recognizing that I needed to be a bit more flexible and adapt and be more curious. And it was a whole 2 year, 3 year process down the line where I started understanding where I was, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was at the end of my university years, third years, where after the third year, where I'm like, okay, I know where I am. I'm orienting myself in this place. I don't belong in some ways, but I do belong in others, and that's okay. And then I decided to do my master's, and I did my master's in Spain.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, okay, I'm ready to try something new. So there was this theme of always wanting to try something new, right?
Yeah.
And move away. And then I did my master's in Spain, got that done. Best years of my life, independent, living away from parents, feeling free. Then I got my doctorate, lived in Colombia for a few more years, worked there, and then I got this awesome opportunity to come to Dubai
Mm-hmm.
and practice as a clinical psychologist here with a variety of clients and stories, and different stories from the ones I saw in Spain and in Colombia and in the US, and it just feels like the right place
Mm-hmm.
professionally for me. So this is a little bit of my story and how I ended up here and what I do.
You had a very multicultural background. How do you feel that helped you to shape who you are, or to shape you professionally or personally?
Yeah, I love that question, and I think it's definitely made me who I am. I believe that these experiences that I've had in Colombia growing up, in the US, not fitting in,
Mm-hmm.
and slowly fitting in into an American culture, but also the US is a melting pot, right?
Yeah.
So you have people from all over the world that live in one place. So I was already exposed living in the US to different backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my first time going to school with someone that was American, but their family was from Pakistan or from the Philippines or from Spain or from Mexico. So it was a really big opportunity to try their food, learn about their language, learn about their religious festivities. So it was an immersion in the US about the different cultures and different countries that existed.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I felt that when people lived in the part of the US where I'm from, which is Texas, not a lot of people left Texas. Not a lot of people at that time wanted to travel or own the passport, even because everyone, their life was in the US.
Yeah.
And I was this girl that would be traveling back and forth to Colombia, to the US. And I didn't understand what a privilege that was until many years later, where I realized, wow, that ability to go back and forth, dip in and out of a country,
Mm-hmm.
is a huge privilege. And it gives you perspective taken, and it gives you gratitude, right? Because what I had in the US, I didn't have in Colombia, and vice versa. What I had in Colombia, I didn't have in the US. So I think it's made me a more grateful person.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's given me the skill to be more curious,
Yeah.
of other people's backgrounds. And I think it's also given me the opportunity to hold everyone's story as equal, right? People's no story has more value. My story doesn't have more value than yours, because everyone comes from a different starting point and a different country belief, religious belief, political standpoint. So I think all of these different cultures, countries that I've lived in, has allowed me to almost be an observer and recognize what I want to take from each experience, each person in my personal life, and also be extremely respectful of other people's life decisions and stories.
You said you were already a very good listener, but I also feel like these experiences, like these cultural exposures that you had, also even make you a better, like the best version of a good listener. That, because like you said, you are not judging anything. You understand. You're more curious to understand everybody. Actually, that's very beautiful, because it ties back to why I want to do this channel. It's also, you obviously in your profession, in your life experiences, you get to listen to many people's story. But a lot of people doesn't have that chance or couldn't meet that variety of people. I think this channel really also provides people this opportunity to build up a perspective like you, that, you know, like see different people's lives, see how different culture is, etc. I think that's that actually really relates to it. Yeah.
And you know what, I feel really grateful actually that I'm having this interview with you, because I feel it's the first time where someone interviews me, you know. One, because I'm always at the listening end of people's stories, but it's also a reminder for myself, you know, even as I'm doing this with you today, it's a reminder for myself that, wait a minute, but you also have a story.
Yeah.
You also have a story for other people to listen to, worth listening to. Your experiences also matter, right? Because as a clinical psychologist, you are definitely there's a mirror, right? You're mirroring your client's stories, you're mirroring their emotions, you're mirroring their thought process, but there is no insight into the therapist's lives, right? Because that's how, it's not about you, it's about the therapy and the client. But this opportunity is also allowing me to have a space to give importance to me and to say, you know what, I also matter and my story also may resonate with other people, which is why I'm so grateful that we're here.
Thank you. I imagine you also definitely has like difficult times for yourself, challenges for yourself.
Yeah.
What do you think is the challenges moment for you in your life, and how do you deal with it?
You know, because I grew up, as I said earlier, in the US, and I was very academically driven and very successful academically. And then I moved to Colombia, and it was a time of huge adaptation. And I think that was the first time in my life where things didn't happen my way, right? My expectation and my idea of the move wasn't what actually happened, right? All my friends were living their best life in university, meeting new people in their respective states and the degrees, and they were living away from home. And I was living the opposite reality. I was living with my parents. I was in a different country that I felt I didn't fit in, and I wasn't doing great academically. So I think a moment that was very challenging for me was in that moment recognizing that everything I thought was just obvious would work, didn't work. And I was faced with this situation where I no longer was feeling successful or important or capable or skillful. And it took a toll on me. It made me feel, what am I doing? I made the worst decision of my life coming here. Initially, it was because I was very curious and I was very adventurous, and it made sense that everyone was going to different places, and I wanted to be exotic and go back home and live all of this life that in paper just looked exciting. But in it, I was really unhappy, and I was very scared that that was going to be my life. And I think at that moment was the first time where I started therapy for the first time.
For yourself?
For myself, yes. I decided, well, I didn't decide actually. It was suggested by my mom actually at that time, like, listen, you're going through a lot. I don't know what to say to you anymore. You're really struggling with this move. Why don't you talk to someone? And I have to say, I'm really grateful that she allowed that opportunity for me. And I attended therapy for the first time. And this is where I learned for the first time, as I was beginning my career in psychology, what anxiety was, right? And then I remember the psychologist saying, you struggle with anxiety. And that was a huge aha moment for me, and a little bit of a frustrating moment, because I'm thinking, I don't have anxiety. I'm perfect. I'm a go-getter. I have the best grades. I'm involved in all my groups back home. And you're telling me I have now anxiety? So it was a little bit of a confrontational moment where I remember it just stayed in my mind for, I want to say days, even months, this concept of me struggling with anxiety. And then until I recognized, yes, I did. And I still do struggle with anxiety, with this challenge of control, right? Letting go of your expectations and an idea of how things should go and an idea of who you should be, and being flexible to the context and staying present in the moment and being adaptable to the situation that you have that is outside of your control, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a few of challenging situations and some of the things that I've done, which is definitely ask for help.
But that's actually a very important thing to do, to ask for help. And I do realize oftentimes, even my friends, myself, oftentimes I think two things. One thing is like you were describing for yourself, like you don't realize that you need help. Sometimes I don't feel I'm depressed. I don't know I'm having anxiety issue. Like that's one thing. And the second thing is, even sometimes you realize you have some issue, but it's also very hard to reach out for help. How would you, if you're speaking to someone like watching this video who might be potentially struggling, what's your advice for them to really understand if they're struggling and understand how to reach out for help?
So a couple of things I would say. One is recognizing that everyone has mental health. That mental health is not the equivalent of a mental illness. That's a big realization. Because at the beginning, you associate mental health to a disease, a struggle, someone that's crazy or that's dangerous or that's psycho or that is inadequate. So no, we all have mental health, and we all need to take care of our mental health just like we take care of our physical health. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing is that our emotions fluctuate throughout the week, throughout the day. So those fluctuations, we want to normalize it. And sometimes we think we're bipolar, we're going crazy, or we are, unwell, or we need. No, you're normal if your emotions fluctuate throughout the day, throughout the week. So we need to consider three things when we're looking for help. One is, how long have I felt this way? Okay. Has it been more than 2 weeks? And we're going to use a 2-week mark here. And I will also say, if it has gone over those 2 weeks, it needs to be present in different contexts. It's not just one context. It needs to be the feeling in different contexts. The second thing is, how frequent are these feelings, right? Are they very frequent? Are they not as frequent? Frequency is important. And lastly is, how is it affecting my day-to-day life? Am I being able to function in the way that I would like to function, or the way that I was functioning before? These three things are really important before asking for help. And then the last thing I would say is that the bravest thing you can do is say help. The bravest thing you can do is say, I don't know. There's so much value in the unknown, in the help that you can receive. That allows you to grow.
Reaching out to say, hey, I might need help. It's already like a big success. For me personally, at least, like realizing I need help. And then I struggled a long time to actually go out there, like ask for help. But everything after, it's way easier. You just have to make that first move. And then, your job is basically listening to other people's stories, understanding their lives. I would imagine probably a lot of them are negative stories, right? Like a lot of negative emotions or seeking for your help. But in the same time, how do you take care of your own emotion? How do you make sure that you are giving enough attention to your own emotion, to your own, like to yourself?
Yeah, my own well-being. I see it slightly different when I hear people's stories and I hear their painful emotions, and I witness their painful experiences. I have an idea in my mind, which is that we hurt where we care. And pain is inedible as humans, right? And so if I think that way, I'm always thinking that painful experience, that painful emotion that client is bringing in the room is actually showing me what they deeply care about, what they value, what actually moves their needle.
Mm-hmm.
So the way it's coming out might be through painful, hurtful, quote unquote discomfortable, uncomfortable feelings. However, I know that there is behind that or below those discomfort feelings, there is a value. So that's what I'm interested in. So at the end of the day, I don't get charged or affected by these negative feelings or stories because I know we're I'm almost talking the same language. I want to get to the bottom of what's behind that feeling. What do you care about? What moves your needle? How can I be an agent to get you to contact that? I always see that there is two sides to the coin, right? Behind pain, there's something we care about. Behind something that is painful, that's dark, there's a light. So I'm always holding that in mind. Having said that, there are important things that I have to do to maintain a good mental health for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I wake up early in the morning and I work out in the morning 3 times a week. I go on walks. I have a pet, which is really nice. And I have a small dog that I like cuddling with and taking on walks. And I make sure that my weekends are for me, where I am really blocking out that time to spend time with my husband, with my loved ones, to be in touch with my family, and almost try as hard as I can to do what I preach, which is to contact with your core values and to really reflect back as to what brings you meaning. So there's definitely a layer of me which is being of service to others, but there's also many other layers and parts of me that are outside my role as a therapist, right? So there's the sister in me. So I care about my relationship with my sister, so I'm going to engage with her. I love adventure, so I'm going to make sure that I have some trips planned in the pipeline or some adventure over the weekend. Or I'm a big foodie, so I make sure that I have some foods that I want to crave and look after. And I'm almost putting all those things out so that I am taking care of myself as well, apart from my role as a therapist.
I think that's also a beautiful message, like your career or your profession is part of you, probably a very important part of you. But outside of that, I remember you always tell me you have to have a lot of different buckets, right?
Yes.
Like this is just one bucket of you, and there are so many different buckets that we should take care of as well.
Yeah.
I want to come back to one thing that you mentioned. I think it's very important actually how you are seeing it, which you say basically the pain or the negative emotions are sort of just a symptom, but the root cause might be very different. And you as a therapist, you try to, like, of course you listen to those negative emotions, but what you really care or what you really try to associate yourself with is the deep root cause. I find it very powerful, but in the same time, I find it might also be very difficult for people when you are actually going through those negative emotions. It's very difficult for you to see it objectively.
Yeah. And this is why I always, and I, in myself and with my clients, we always talk about defining your values first, right? Not in a moment where you are overwhelmed or when you're in pain, but on a Monday night or on a Sunday night, sitting down with yourself and asking yourself, who do I deeply care about in my life? Who are these core people that I would give up anything for or that I love dearly? That's one thing. Second thing, the day that I'm no longer here, okay, in this world, what do I want to leave behind? What is the legacy that I want to leave behind? What do I want my life to be in service of? Right? So I want to be remembered as empathetic, compassionate, fair, loving, adventurous, funny, healthy, and I want to ask myself, are these values important to me, or am I just saying it because my mom tells me it's important to be loyal, but I actually don't believe loyalty is important? I need to question where these values are coming from, but also define them, right? So that when you are living your everyday, you can go back to this framework, these values, and say, how am I acting on them? right? Because every day you will either get closer to your values or further away from your values. There are days where you might not be as empathetic, days where you might not be as fair, days where you not be as adventurous, days where you may not be as healthy. Okay, but our aim is to get as close to these values as possible, so that whenever you're having a painful day, a stressful day, you can ask yourself, why do I care so much? Why am I in so much pain? Which value is it rubbing on? You know, it's like when you are driving and you're getting a little bit of road rage, you know, why are you getting so angry? You know, is it that it's touching on fairness? Is it that it's touching on the fact that you want to feel respected, and you're going to be late to a meeting, and so you feel that running late speaks about how respectable you are, right? There's different frameworks about it, but I think curiosity in asking, why is this bothering so much? You know, what value is it actually going against?
Yeah. You mentioned that your purpose, or like the thing that you're really enjoying, is to help other people, and the act of service is really important for you. And
Yeah.
obviously, like, your job is basically helping people every day. And I wonder, like, what is one moment that you actually felt it, like, I'm so proud of what I'm doing?
Yes, and I want to actually say it was a moment that I didn't ever expect to show me that I was in service of others, and I'll explain. I remember years ago, I had a client, and the client was going through a really hard time, really severe depressive episode, and for some reason he had to move, and this client was having our last session, and this client gave me a plant. Okay, and I was like, that's a really sweet gift. And the client said to me, I remember in our first sessions you asked me to take care of a plant, and this is the plant that I have been taking care of all this time. And I was this dying plant. The plant was dying. And now this plant has grown, and it's strong, and I want to give it to you as a sign of the work that we have done together. And that for me just touched my heart.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't pinpoint what I had done, right? We had worked together for about 2.5 years, and this plant signified the process, the healing process that this person had gone through. And to this day, years later, the plant is in my house. I water the plant and take care of the plant. It is alive, it is healthy. And I feel a sense of responsibility with this plant, to keep it alive and not make it die, But I think it's moments like that where you say, wow, this work makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, it's priceless.
It's very touching. I was having goosebumps just now. Just like we were talking about mental health, it's really like you need to take care of your mental health, not just like one big change in life, but you need to water this plant every day. You need to take care of it every day. You need to see how it's growing. And I think that's exactly what you are doing. Maybe you are not changing my life in one session, but every talk we had, every like conversation, it's like nurturing. You're nurturing people. I think that's a really like respectful aspect of career.
Yeah, and you know what? I feel it's reciprocated, and this is why when people ask me, "Are you not tired? You work really long hours. Are you sure that you want to have a session this late?" And I say yes, and I want to have the session, and I feel that just as I am giving, I am receiving.
Yeah.
And it's a two-way relationship where I'm not just giving my energy and my knowledge, and no, I learn and I get, and I actually go home and reflect about some of the conversations I have with my clients, because everyone makes me think differently, and everyone brings a different part of me, and the conversations are so great and so soul nourishing that it almost feels like my plant also is being watered in these conversations, really.
Yeah. You're going to be mom soon.
Yes. I am.
And how do you feel about that? Will you be feeling anxious
Mm.
about it?
For me, it's been a long journey to become a mom. And so it's been a journey of a lot of anxiety around becoming a mom and fear of not being able to become a mom. And then when it happens, it's almost like, oh, it's this miracle's here, and it actually can happen. And then once you're in the journey of pregnancy, there's definitely a lot of question marks that come up. You start seeing body changes, you start thinking that your life is going to shift and change, and you're now thinking about another person that's going to come in. So I'm in the process of navigating all of these questions, but I think it comes from a place of love. When I go back to behind the worry, behind the pain, what do I care about? I'm able to connect now with what I care about. So, yes, there's anxiety. Yes, there's stress. Yes, there's fear. Yes, there's discomfort as my body's growing and shifting and changing. And now a new person's going to come in. Definitely, these feelings are there. But I'm also anchoring right now myself in the love, in the real intention that I have always had to become a mother.
Yeah.
So,
and you love kids.
And I love kids. I love kids. And so I feel that it makes sense that this pain or this discomfort is worth it. So don't get me wrong. There's days where I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I getting into? Or days, now that I can't tie my shoe very well, so I need to wear other types of shoe. And it's like my body's changing so much. And I'm able to say, wow, I'm creating a life.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful thing to do.
Yeah. I wonder because I think you also specialize in like parenting.
Yes.
And this type of, so you do meet a lot of parents and
yes, and kids and teenagers. Yes.
Yeah. Have you like putting yourself there, because you obviously seen there's could be a lot of things going wrong when the kids growing up. Will you be scared of what if my kids doesn't grow the way that I want?
Yeah.
Or another question, like, do you think there is a perfect way to parent your kids?
So I'll answer the second question first. There is no perfect way to parent your kid. No matter how many books you read, how many therapists you go see, what advice you get, I don't think there's a perfect way. When I talk to parents, we always talk about them knowing their kids more than anyone else. So I'm going to give them a framework and some strategies that I know from behavioral principles and psychological principles would work. But that doesn't mean that it will be a 1+1=2 approach with their kids. So we're going to have a conversation about what's working, what isn't working, and we can get creative together, right? So it's a constructive space. Do I get worried about my child potentially having these issues that I see in therapy? No, and not because I don't think my daughter, it's a girl, not because I don't think my daughter will not struggle, but because I think one of the biggest protective factors when it comes to the parenting journey, that we will all make mistakes, we will all mess up, we will all create, unfortunately, uncomfortable feelings in our kids. But I think the most important thing is your own work. And I think I am committed to my own work. I believe I am a work in progress. I believe I don't have all the answers. I believe I have plenty of things to learn. I believe I will not be the perfect parent. And matter of fact, I don't want to be a perfect parent because I want to learn. And I believe that I can ask for help. So I have these core beliefs which will allow me to be the best version of a parent that I can be. And that's all I can promise as a mom. And I think that makes me be relieved in this parenting journey that's ahead.
If anyone watching this video is struggling, what is one thing that you think could work?
I'm going to give you 7 things, actually. These are your healthy pillars of your mental health. One is sleep. If anything, sleep. I would say that if you ask me for one thing, I will say sleep. good quality sleep. Prioritize that. Second thing, community. Finding people that you resonate. It doesn't have to be lots, maybe one or two, but finding your people. Three, making sure that you're moving your body. Our emotions need movement, need release. Fourth, we need to allow time to focus. No multitasking, one thing at a time. We want to also make sure that we're having downtime, which is time for yourself, for reflection. 5 minutes, just lay there. Allow yourself to do nothing. Just reflect. What have I done today? What do I want to do? And lastly, I think it's playtime. Laugh. We don't laugh. We don't have enough time to be humorous. So allow yourself to be silly.